My name is Dr. Nathan Groot. I am a music instructor at the Arkansas School for Mathematics, Sciences, and the Arts, where I teach string ensemble, applied string lessons, and other music classes. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Jolly Sailor, which is part of the North Region Cadet Orchestra audition packet for the years 2023 through 2026. You'll find this in your Strictly Strings Book 2 on page 20. In our packet, it gives us a tempo, quarter note equals 110. So just a couple things to notice. First things we're looking at with a new piece are the key signature and the time signature. So key signature is 2 sharps. It's looking like we are probably in B minor. So remember our 2 sharps, we might be in D major, but based on the notes that we have and what's going on harmonically, we're probably going to be in B minor. So just remember that our 2 sharps in this key are F sharp and C sharp. So in this key, on our G string, we're going to be looking at a 3/4 finger pattern, so a high 3. On our D string, we're going to be looking at a 2/3 finger pattern, so high 2 touching our 3rd finger. A string is going to be the same, and then anything on the E string is going to be a 1/2 finger pattern where we have a low 2. So time signature, we're looking at 2/4, so there are 2 quarter notes in each measure. 1, 2. 1, 2, okay? All right, so we've established the key, we've established the time signature. So let's talk just a little bit about the rhythm here. So you'll notice that on this page in your book, at the top it says, Learning More 16th Note Patterns. This is one of the main sort of teaching points, one of the main ideas in this piece. So we have quarter notes, we have 1/8 notes, we also have 16th notes. Just remember that a quarter note in this time signature is 1 beat, an 1/8 note is half of that, half a beat, and a 16th note is going to be a quarter of that. So how many 1/8 notes fit within a quarter note? 2. How many 16th notes fit within a quarter note? 4. Just something to remember. When we're counting, if it's quarter notes, I'll say 1, 2, 1, 2. If it's 1/8 notes, I'll say 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and. If it's 16th notes, I'll say 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, just to clear everything up if I start counting something, okay? So, first pattern I want to talk about. 1/8 note plus 2 16th notes. 1 and 2 and this is how this starts off. So, if we're counting 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So this is a rhythmic pattern that if you've done Suzuki, you remember from the Twinkle Variations. If you want to really break it down, imagine that they are just 4 16th notes, okay? 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a. But how many 16th notes fit within 1/8 note? 2. So 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a. So if we're thinking about the underlying 16th notes, that's how that's actually working. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a. That's why when I'm counting it, I say 1 and a, 2 and a, 1 and a, 2 and a. That way, we can make sure that we're really playing the correct rhythm. This rhythm can sometimes turn into something a little bit different. Oftentimes, that's a triplet. That's what everything wants to turn into when we don't want it to. It wants to turn into ta 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 ta, but it's not that. It's ta 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 ta, right? Okay? The other rhythm I want to talk about first appears in measure 9. So we are going to keep talking about this idea of thinking about the underlying 16th notes. This is called subdividing. So if your teacher says, subdivide that part, this is what they're talking about, is thinking about the underlying rhythm, the smaller rhythmic divisions. So measure 9 sounds like this. We have a quarter note, then we have a dotted eighth, plus a 16th, okay? What does the dot do? This is the augmentation dot. The dot adds half the value back to whatever it's attached to. So a normal eighth note has how many 16th notes? 2. With an augmentation dot, that now dotted eighth note has 3 16th notes contained within it, okay? So, if I'm thinking about 16th notes in measure 9, I'm going to count 1 E enda, 2 E enda, and play what's written. So, 1 E enda, 2 E enda, 1 E enda, 2 E and a 1. So this dotted 2 E and a 1. 2 E and a 1, okay? If you want to subdivide that with the bow and actually play it, 1 E and a 2 E and a 1, da 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 da, right? So thinking about how that actually works, if you have a metronome that will play the 16th notes like da 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 da, it can be a good way to hear those 16th notes being subdivided for you and making sure that you don't turn this into, yes, again, a triplet. So we have the 1 and a 2 and a, and then we have the 1, 2, a 1 rhythm. Okay, so those are the two main rhythms that are going to be your pitfalls in this. In terms of the left hand, there's not a whole lot here that will mess you up. There's one thing that I think could mess somebody up, and that happens in the second measure, where we go from a B first finger to an E first finger. This is the interval of a fifth. These are difficult intervals because it means that we have to pivot. If we don't pivot, we might end up out of tune. So we have to imagine that there's like this invisible fret going across. So wouldn't life be easy if we had frets? If only. But we have to imagine that there's an invisible fret going across our fingerboard. So when we play this B, we then just have to keep our hand frame the way it is and pivot very slightly, okay? And that way we will be set up to put that first finger exactly where it needs to be. Another fingering thing, this is not difficult, but it's something that's easy to miss. Notice in your packet it says that you must follow all fingerings, all written fingerings. So in measure 6, the very last note is an E, and there is a 4 marked over that. So that means you do need to use your fourth finger. And in case you're wondering, the teachers who are behind the screen will definitely know if you don't use your fourth finger, because a fourth finger E and an open E sound quite different. So just make sure that you are practicing using that fourth finger. If you don't practice with it, it's easy to kind of forget about it. So just make sure, just be extra careful about practicing with that fourth finger. Okay, let's talk a little bit about articulations. We have a couple of them here. So in the first measure, we have staccato on the 8th note. Staccato, we're going to play this a little shorter. So we want space between the 8th note and the 16th note. We don't want it to be like this. We want it to be short, da-da, short, da-da. So practice at a slow tempo, stopping your bow. Right? So that there's space, so that when you go fast, that space will then translate. Okay? There are more staccatos now in measure 2. So we don't want this to be like this, legato. We want it to be short. Here's the other thing about staccatos. We are really concerned with the beginning of the note, the initiation of that bow stroke. So we want that to have sort of like a hard consonant. So think about your consonants and vowels. Think about consonants. La is something that's softer. Ka is something that's harder. We want this to be more of a ka than a la, okay? So just add a little bit more of weight to the bow and a little bit of a pinch so that you can get that really clean articulation on each of those staccato notes. You'll notice in measure 3, there's a marking that says simile, and this means that you're going to continue using these same articulations, staccatos on eighth notes, throughout. Okay, so even though it's only marked in the first 2 measures, this continues on in the same way. The next one we see are the 2 accents in measure 8 on these E's. So these are ones where we want a little bit of a pinch to the beginning of the stroke and more speed. So emphasizing both of these notes. So we're really not using very much bow at all through here. And then when we get to the accent, use more bow and make sure that you have a really clean initiation of both of those accented strokes. All right, measure 9. Here is our really tricky rhythm that we talked about. Here's the thing about this tricky rhythm. It's connected with this line. It may look like a slur, but it's not a slur. First of all, it would be a tie if there were no articulations, but in any case, it's not a slurred bowing, it is a hooked bowing, right? So if we have notes that are slurred and they have an articulation under them, so that means that we articulate and re-articulate each of those notes as they're marked. So in this measure, we're going to go down, up, and then for that 16th note, we're going to initiate the stroke again. So instead of, we're going to go down, up, down, right? So make sure that you stop your bow, start your bow when you have that last 16th note of that measure. This continues on much the same. We have accents in the very last measure, but if you're doing all of those articulations really well, it's going to make a huge difference in your audition. All right, so what else can we talk about? Dynamics. These are really important in any audition. What do we start out with? There's an F. This means forte. We're going to start nice and loud. So we're going to play forte through these first 8 measures. That means we're going to use a good amount of weight and a contact point that is not too close to the fingerboard. I think right in the middle here, and in fact, I think this is most comfortable pretty much just smack dab in the middle of the bow. This rhythm and getting that articulation that we want, okay? So middle of the bow, about halfway between your bridge and your fingerboard, if nothing else, a little closer to the bridge because it's forte. Good amount of weight, don't use too much speed. Use a good amount of bow there. So we stay at a pretty steady volume there with our forte dynamic. What happens in measure 9? The dynamic level goes from forte down to mezzo piano. So it drops quite a bit in this next section at measure 9, which means we need to change our contact point to be closer to the fingerboard, use less weight. It stays mezzo piano all the way until measure 14, where we have this huge crescendo from mezzo piano up to fortissimo. So this is a spot where you're going to want to increase your weight, increase your speed, and move your contact point closer to the bridge, okay? So starting in measure 9 here, we're mezzo piano. Crescendoing in 14. And then those last 2 are accented, and that's going to be a huge moment, and you're going to want to make that super, super dramatic. All right, so next we're going to play this at different tempos. So we're going to start it at 60 and go all the way up to your goal tempo of 110. Playing it over and over again at different tempos is not the most reliable or efficient way to practice. In fact, it's one of the least. I don't want you to use this exclusively as a practice aid. I want you to practice in all the ways that you've discussed with your teachers and the ways that you've heard about with, looking at little tiny sections and problem solving, all these things. But this can be a good way to sort of test each tempo and see if you're playing everything the way you want to be playing it. So feel free to play along or just listen as a guide. If you would like to sing along or count along, or clap the rhythm along. All of those are fantastic. So we're going to go ahead and play those right about now. 1, 2. One, two. One, two. One, two. One, two. One, two. Alright, I hope you found this video somewhat useful. I wish you the very best of luck in your upcoming audition. You will do very, very well, I'm sure. If I missed anything, if there's something that you wanted addressed that I didn't address, just let me know, and I would be happy to follow up and address it and help answer any lingering questions you may have about this excerpt. Okay, best of luck in your audition, and as always, happy practicing.